Today's one of those days out when friends come to San Diego, and it's one of these days. And I always feel like on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce or something, I need to apologize for the day that we would have cloudy skies in San Diego. Don't come in May. You know when the May gray stops? It stops right when the middle school graduations are, and there's 1,000 people sitting outside, and then it's 100. I used to do sound for a middle school graduation, and literally every time. It'd be gray like this, and then all of a sudden it'd be 100 degrees. Hey, Stevie! Hey, Paul. What are we doing, man? What do you think we get this thing rolling, huh?
Well, Paul, I think we should.
Okay.
All right, well, welcome everybody to this May Gray San Diego 50th ever Sunday Assembly in San Diego. Thank you, so glad you are here. 50 Sunday Assemblies, oh my goodness. Before we get started today, I want to make sure you know we are digitally recording this event. And if you do not want to participate in said activity, then please sit in this designated media-free zone. As always, we will start off today with the wonderful Mr. Paul Svensson.
Hey. Okay, so I believe this is probably a song that nobody in this room knows. Now, some of you might have heard of Harry Belafonte before, right? Some of you? Yeah. And you used to, usually Harry's like, Deo. We all know Harry. Well, this is a different song. And I need to teach you, it's not a calypso song at all. It's an African feel song, but it's in 5/4 time. Okay, so normally songs are like 1, 2, 3, 4. Not this one, it's got an extra beat. So it goes like this. Now, don't try and clap or you'll hurt yourself. Although I will teach you how to clap this. I'll teach you now. So, I'm playing along this, and I want you to go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Keep it going. Not bad. Okay, so let's start together. Ready? And 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Awesome. Okay. So that's the first thing we're teaching you is how to deal with 5/4 time, which is really good if you ever go to Greece. Because a lot of Greek music is in 5/4, and it's just the dancing thing, because you'll feel that. Okay, that's the first thing. Next thing I need to teach you a word. The word is abatiwa. 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 Good, that'll come up later. It means so is life in Swahili, sort of. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to sing, and I will sing the first 2 lines, and then you come back and sing again, and then we'll teach it to you that way, and then once we get that going, then we'll do the special movements. Oh, we come from the water, cool, refreshing water. Go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the water, cool, refreshing water. Go back to the water, turn the world around. Oh, where'd my slide go? Oh, so is life. Ah, so is life. Got it? You guys are so good. There are so many people that I've done this song for over the years that get just confused. You guys are all dialed in. Actually, if you ever want to see this song, it's on an old episode of The Muppet Show with Belafonte and the Muppets. That's where the quick story of this is that was back before there was any recording equipment. We couldn't video and we couldn't go watch it on YouTube. And so a bunch of song leading kind of guys like me all over the place, saw that, and went, ooh, we got to have that song. And we're scribbling down notes and trying to figure out when it was done, you know, and we're just, so then we would get together and have different versions of it. It was, okay, here we go. We come from the fire, living in the fire, go back to the fire, turn the world around. Go! We come from the fire, living in the fire, go back to the fire, turn the world around. Oh, so is life. Ah, so is life. Oh, so is life. Ah, turn the world around. Now clap. Ready? Do the clap. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Ready? Go. 1, 2, 3. Again. Now we'll all stand up. Those of us who are able or want to. If you don't want to, don't. Don't do anything I say. Only do what you want to do. So now we're going to sing the thing, but when we hit turn the world around, turn around. Just go spin once, right? So let's say, turn the world around, right? Okay, so that's that instruction. And then when we get to the, oh, so is life. Oh, so is life. Ah, so is life. Oh, so is life. Ah, turn the world around. You got it. Oh, you guys are so awesome. I love this song so much. This is fun. Here we go now. Well, we come from the mountain, way up on the mountain. Go back to the mountain, turn the world around. We come from the mountain, way up on the mountain. Go back to the mountain, turn. Here we go. Oh, so is life. Ah, so is life. Oh, so is life. Ah, turn the world around. Clap, 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 clap. Again. We have another section here. Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we try that? Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? Do we one another clearly? Do we know who we... Now we do it fast. Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do we know who? Try it. Do we know who I am? Do I know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? Better clap. Go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Water make the river, river wash the mountain. Fire make the sunlight, turn the world around. Heart is of the river, body is the mountain. Mind is of the sunlight, turn the world around. Oh, so is life a batiwa. So is life. Oh, so is life a batiwa. So is life. Oh, so is life a batiwa. Turn the world around.
Paul, that was excellent. That was outstanding. Wow, what fun. Well, welcome to Sunday Assembly. Sunday Assembly is a radically inclusive secular community that meets monthly to hear great talks, to connect for community events, to sing silly songs, and to have some snacks afterward, but mostly we're here to celebrate this one life that we all know that we have. The motto for Sunday Assembly is live better, help often, and wonder more. If I can ask by a show of hands, how many of you are the first time to Sunday Assembly? Give those people a high five. We're so glad to have you with us. Thank you very much. Every Sunday Assembly has a theme, and the theme for this Sunday Assembly is sign. We have just so much happening in the world today. I mean, just even right now, we have a Mars InSight, which is headed all the way to the planet to find out whether they have water. It's on its way right now. We've Kilauea volcano. I mean, when's the last time we had a volcano in our lifetime that's of this magnitude? And the big one's maybe still coming. Well, we had the 40th school shooting, 2018. And the 1-year anniversary of the Mueller investigation. But more than that, the main thing we've had is a royal wedding, and I think a lot of people watched that. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex got married yesterday, and I want to point out, Lelia, where are you? She's in there. She's wearing a little hat. So if you please notice her hat, because she's ready for some tea and biscuits for anybody to join her. So we're so happy. But that's what's happening in the large scope of things as the world turns. But we do a little thing called Life Happens Here, which is an opportunity for assemblers to share what's going on with one another, and we have a few of those right here. So I'll share those with you right now. This is my second to the last assembly. Perfect opportunity, Leah, to use the word penultimate. This is my second last assembly before moving to Oregon for grad school, and I'll miss all of you so much. Leah, where are you? Oh, we'll miss you too. Oh my goodness. Well, maybe the last assembly will never come and you won't get to go, so that'll be fine. Okay, excellent, thank you. I've been reminded, let you know that we do have the ability to watch children age 1.5 up. We have some fine certified people watching the kids today, and also we have a new teen program going on. But as we thank you for that, move on. Margot finished her doctorate in public health. Margot, congratulations, doctor. Well done. And from Val, my Aunt Harriet died last night. She was warm, authentic, and could laugh at anything. I'll miss her. She sounds like a lovely person. Thank you for sharing that with us. We have a reading today. Charlie, I think, will be reading Special Problems in Vocabulary by Tony Hoagland.
Special Problems in Vocabulary by Tony Hoagland. There is no single particular noun for the way a friendship, stretched over time, grows thin, then one day snaps with a popping sound. No verb for accidentally breaking a thing while trying to get it open, a marriage, for example. No particular phrase for losing a book in the middle of reading it, and therefore never learning the end. There is no expression, in English at least, for avoiding the sight of your own body in the mirror, for disliking the touch of the afternoon sun, for walking into the flatlands and dust that stretch out before you after your adventures are done. No adjective for gradually speaking less and less, because you have stopped being able to say the one thing that would break your life loose from its grip. Certainly no name that one can imagine for the aspen tree outside the kitchen window, in spade-shaped leaves spinning on their stems, working themselves into a pale green vegetable blur. No word for waking up one morning and looking around, because the mysterious spirit that drives all things seems to have returned and is on your side again.
Thank you very much, Charlie. Appreciate that. Very nice. Our speaker today is Dr. Karen Emmorey, who is a distinguished professor at the School of Speech, Language, and Hearing Sciences at San Diego State University and director of Laboratory for Language and Cognitive Neuroscience. She received her doctorate in linguistics in 1987 from UCLA and worked as a senior staff scientist at the Salk Institute of Biological Studies for many years. Dr. Emmorey's research focuses on how deaf and hearing people produce and comprehend sign language and how these processes are represented in the brain. We are so pleased to have her here. Dr. Emmorey?
Thank you so much for inviting me so I can share some of my research. So I study sign languages, and I study sign languages to try to understand more about human languages, what's universal to human languages, and also about how the brain processes languages. And what I'm going to share with you today, hopefully this will work. Try again. We had this working before. Okay. All right, so I'm going to talk about two questions that are raised by looking at sign languages. So one difference between sign and spoken languages, of course, is what we call their modalities. So spoken languages are perceived auditorily, and they're produced with the vocal tract, with the tongue and the lips. And of course, sign languages are perceived visually and with the hands as the linguistic articulators. So one kind of obvious question is whether those differences change how the brain is organized for language. These are pretty radical differences. Does it affect what brain areas are involved in language processing? And the other question that comes up that you don't see with spoken languages but you see with sign languages is whether the brain can distinguish between gestures, pantomimes, and signs. And this is because the same articulators, the hands, are used for both, communicating both those kinds of things. So does the brain make a distinction between those? Okay? All right. So I first need to tell you a little bit about the brain. And what key areas we know from research on spoken language are involved in language processing. So one is called Broca's area. How many have heard of Broca's area? Anybody? Oh, you guys are on the ball. All right. So Broca's area, we know if you have damage there, you can have a non-fluent aphasia, speech production problems. Whereas Wernicke's area, how many have heard of Wernicke's area? Okay. So this is a region that we know is involved in language comprehension. So when you look at neuroimaging studies, you see that particular area active when you're processing spoken language. Okay, so next. All right, so one question that arises is whether these two regions are involved in language processing because of the input-output systems for spoken language. So Broca's area is just in front of, just anterior to the region that controls the motor speech articulator, so the tongue and the lips, okay? Next, okay? And Wernicke's area is just behind auditory cortex, right? So maybe you see Wernicke's area being involved because it's near auditory cortex, okay? So this brings us to the question about sign languages. Okay, so sign languages, of course, aren't produced with the vocal tract, but with the hands. And the hands are higher up on that motor sensory strip, so they're in a different location. Okay? And the visual area of the brain is very far away from the auditory area of the brain, so it's in the back of the brain. So one question is, are these two key regions involved in understanding and producing sign languages? Okay, so I'm going to tell you about a study that we did. It's kind of a meta-study, taking a bunch of studies looking at deaf signers producing signs and hearing speakers producing words. We looked in particular at what we call deaf native signers. So these are deaf individuals who are born to deaf signing parents. So they acquire, in this case, American Sign Language from birth, just like hearing people born into English-speaking families learn English from birth. So we're comparing apples and apples, people who grew up with either ASL or English as their native language. Okay? And what we had them do was produce the names of pictures. So that was their task. They were in the scanner. In this case, we're looking at positron emission tomography, or PET. How many people have heard of PET? Okay. So that PET measures kind of, it's a measure of metabolism. Basically, it's looking at blood flow. So when neurons are firing, blood is moving to those regions. We can measure that blood flow. We can measure which regions of the brain are active when you're producing signs or you're producing words. Now, most of you are probably familiar with fMRI or MRI. How many have actually been in an fMRI or MRI scanner? A few people. So one of the things they tell you to do, don't move, right? You have to lay as still as possible, okay? Now, PET is a little more forgiving. It's a little more tolerant of movement. So this is one reason we use this technique for studying sign language, because you could move a little bit more than in the MRI scanner. So our question is, are the same regions involved in sign production and word production? So what we did was we compared, and basically kind of you can think of it as overlaying regions that were active for sign production and for word production. That's the next slide. And what we see in particular is this region, Broca's area, is engaged equally for both sign production and for word production. So what that's telling us is despite the fact that this region is right near the speech articulators, and also despite the fact that there's strong connections between that region and Wernicke's area or auditory cortex, despite those anatomical differences or those anatomical facts, we still see that Broca's area is involved in language production, in a visual manual language, in sign language production. So it's not tied to the speech articulators. Okay, next. Okay, so now what about input, language input? So now this is comprehension. So we don't have kind of a meta study of comprehension, but I've shown you several different studies looking at different sign languages being comprehended. And what you can see is where those circles are, that's activation in Wernicke's area. So this is again telling us that Wernicke's area is not tied to auditory language processing. It's involved when you're visually processing a signed language. One more picture. So what I'm showing you here is a bigger picture of activation when you're visually comprehending signed sentences or signs from different sign languages, from American Sign Language, from British Sign Language, and from Japanese Sign Language. And I can tell you that American Sign Language and British Sign Language are completely different languages, okay? So even though they're surrounded by the same spoken language, they are mutually incomprehensible. When I go to Britain, I don't understand British Sign Language, and when they come here, they don't understand American Sign Language. On the bottom are similar brain activations, but for spoken language. So either spoken Japanese or English or written English. And what you can see is those patterns of neural activation are very similar for the two. So I could actually swap the top and the bottom, and you wouldn't really be able to tell. So that's telling us that signed and spoken languages are engaging the same left hemisphere regions of the brain. Okay. So I come back to my question, is brain organization for language determined by input-output systems? The answer is no. We see that these key language regions, Broca's and Wernicke's area, are engaged in the production and comprehension of sign language. So if I move back to my top question that is raised by sign languages, what determines brain organization for language? Well, by studying sign languages, we know it's not the anatomy of the motor and sensory systems. That's not changing brain organization for language. Okay, so my second question is looking at whether the brain makes a difference between pantomime and sign. And this is because, unlike words, which don't really bear any resemblance to what they mean, so the word, hammer has nothing to do with hammering. It's completely arbitrary. But that's not the case for signs. So there are a number of signs that actually look very much like gestures, like pantomimes. So these are sometimes called handling verbs in sign language. So the sign for drink looks very much like what you would do if you were going to pantomime drinking. The sign for scrub looks very much like pantomiming or pretending to scrub, gesturing scrubbing. And so what we wanted to know was whether or not the brain makes a difference between those two. So I've showed you the regions that are important for language, so Broca's area in particular for language production. These are studies that are looking at regions that are involved when people have to pantomime object use, tool use in particular. So the area is called the superior parietal lobule. It tends to be more active on the left. So this is kind of at the top of the brain. And this is a brain region that's involved in kind of action planning, in interacting with objects. And that's the region that we see engaged when you are pantomiming tool use, when you ask people to pretend to use a razor or a hammer or a toothbrush, something like that. Okay. So our hypotheses were, if we look at these special verbs, these handling, pantomimic-like verbs, if the brain is treating those special verbs as pantomimes, we should see activation, strong activation in this superior parietal region, this region that we know is involved in producing pantomimes. On the other hand, if the brain is treating these as verbs, okay, then we should see activation in Broca's area, in this language region of the brain. That area is not active when people are producing pantomimes, but it is active when they are generating verbs, for example. So we can sort of tease these two hypotheses apart by looking at sign production. So we did another PET study where we had, again, native deaf signers. And we also had hearing people who are non-signers to look at their pantomime production. We had them produce both pantomimes and verbs, and I'll sort of show you what that looked like. And again, we used PET for this. Okay? So the first task was just for the deaf guys because they know sign, and they were asked to generate verbs. And we showed them a picture of an object, and their task, while their brain was being scanned, was to generate a verb. What verb goes with that object? And we actually cleverly kind of just got two types of objects. One object elicited these pantomimic verbs, and the other objects elicited non-pantomimic, non-handling verbs. I'll show you what those look like. So next. So if you showed this picture of a pen, the most likely sign that a verb that people would generate was the verb to write, and that looks like this. Should go. Oops, it already went. Okay, so write and hammer. Okay, so those look very much like pantomimes. So then we had another set that elicited non-pantomimic-like verbs. So the sign for measure, which is elicited by ruler, looks like this. And this is my favorite one. The sign for pour syrup looks like this. Okay. So it definitely doesn't look like you're pouring syrup. It has this unusual hand shape. Okay. So we could compare those pantomimic and non-pantomimic verbs. The other task was to produce or generate a pantomime. And we had both hearing people do this and deaf people. Now for the hearing people, we also asked them to generate pantomimes for those pictures that elicited verbs from the deaf signers. So the picture of the pen for write, generating a pantomime write rather than a verb, generating a pantomime for hammer rather than a verb. And then we had a set of pictures in the next slide that both hearing and deaf people generated pantomimes for. Now we designed these so that when the deaf guys were producing the pantomimes, they couldn't sort of cheat and produce an ASL sign. So the ASL verb that goes with broom is sweep and looks like this. Okay. But a pantomime looks like this. Go ahead. Oh, did it already went? All right. That's okay. All right, and the same thing for pantomiming eating with a fork, right? So the sign, the verb that goes with a fork would be eat, but this is a pantomime that goes with eat. So we could compare pantomimes produced by deaf signers and pantomimes produced by hearing non-signers. Okay. And then finally, in all of these types of studies, you have a baseline task that you can compare each task to that gets rid of activation. It sort of cancels out activation that you're not interested in, like just seeing a picture. So in this task, what you would see was mostly objects that you could manipulate. They were the types of objects that were in the experimental tasks. But your job was to just decide, can you hold it or not? So you would just give a kind of gesture that said in between a sign and a pantomime. For yes, you can hold it, or no, you can't, like for a picture of a house. Okay. So we're getting rid of sort of activation that's related just to motor movements, just to seeing a picture, and to thinking about manipulability. Okay, so here's the results looking at pantomime. So our deaf signers are on the top, producing pantomimes, hearing non-signers on the bottom. They're both engaging what we'd expect for pantomime, which is these superior parietal regions. We saw more activation for the signers than for the hearing non-signers. We think that has to do with the nature of their pantomimes. They were really good at this task compared to our hearing non-signers. They produced more complex pantomimes, often with two hands, often repeated, and so you're seeing a sort of a richer, pantomime richer brain activation. Okay, now here's our key question, looking at now our deaf signers are producing verbs that look like pantomimes, so the write versus hammer. We don't see this strong SPL activation. We see activation in Broca's area, in the language region. What about our hearing people that are producing pantomimes to these same pictures? We see no activation in Broca's area. Okay. Okay, next one. So now let's do a comparison between just within the signers, these signs that look like handling or look like pantomimes versus the ones that don't look like pantomimes. Do we see a difference? The expectation would be that if these write and hammer type verbs are engaging pantomime regions, we should see more activation in SPL. So we do the next thing. What we see there is no difference between these verb types. So just to explain the PET palette, if there were regions that were going to be more active for the handling verbs, we should see red regions regions that are more active for the non-pantomimic verbs, purple regions. But we see lots of green, which is telling us that the brain is not making a distinction between those two sign types. Okay? So, if we come back to my question, does the brain make a distinction between pantomimes and signs, or gestures and signs? And the answer is yes. When you look at brain regions that are engaged for signs, you see these frontal language regions, Broca's region that's involved in lexical processing, word processing, selection, word production. In contrast, when you look at pantomime production, you see these parietal, superior parietal regions active. Now, it's not the case that there's no overlap in the brain whatsoever, but these key regions are distinct for sign production and for pantomime production. Okay? So, my take-home messages. 1, the brain is organized for language, not for speech. We see tremendous overlap between signed and spoken languages in terms of the brain regions that are involved in both their production and their comprehension. And the other take-home message is that even though signs may look like pantomimes, the brain doesn't treat them like pantomimes. We have different regions involved in pantomime and sign production. And thank you for your attention. And I'll be around later if you guys have questions about sign languages.
Doctor, thank you. That was absolutely fascinating. The work you're doing is just amazing. I really feel like as we go along, we're really going to understand the brain. It's just amazing. That's just amazing. We are going to have, once again, Mr. Paul Svensson, as soon as he is audio professional at work there, with song Time After Time. Thank you, Paul. Sorry, it's a new youth group. See the new on there? That's why I'm not really up to speed. I apologize. This is when we have the breakout session, so if you want to join the youth group, they're right in the back there, with lots of fun activities. CC back there, and a couple of our assemblers also. Thank you so much.
Well, that sounds like fun. I'll see you guys later. This is a sit and relax and sing a really pretty song. Lying in my bed, I hear the clock tick and think of you. Caught up in circles, confusion is nothing new. Flashback, warm nights, almost left behind. Suitcase of memories, time after sometimes you picture me. I'm walking too far ahead, you're calling to me. I can't hear what you said, then you say, go slow, I fall behind. The second hand unwind. If you're lost, you can look and you will find me. Time after time. If you fall, I will catch you. I'll be waiting. Time after. Sing it again now. If you're lost, you'll find me. Time after time. If you, I will catch you. I'll be waiting. Time after time. After my picture fades and darkness has turned to gray, watching through windows, you're wondering if I'm okay. Secrets stolen from deep inside. The drum beats out of time. If you're lost, you can look and you will find me. Time after time. If you fall, I will catch you. I'll be waiting. Time after time. Oh, if you're lost, you can look and you will find me. Time after time. If you fall, I will catch you. I'll be waiting. Time after time. after time, time after time, time after time. Beautiful.
Thank you, Paul. That was really touching. We ask assemblers to share a piece of their life. Everybody has a story to tell, so if you have one that you're dying to get out there or would like to share with us, we'd love to hear it. If it's something you don't feel that you can say yourself, you can write it down. We'll have somebody read it for you. We've done that in the past, and we've had some really, really funny stories, and we've had some really heart-rending stories, but they're all a part of this beautiful fabric of life that we all share. Today we have Alexis Wesley to share a story with us. Record. Yeah, I'm sorry. Alexis Record, I'm sorry.
Charles Wesley was a poem reader. He's kind of cute, though. I like that ship. So our sign language interpreter didn't show up today, but that's okay, we're flexible. My personal moment's in American Sign Language, so what we're going to do instead is I'm going to sign it like I was normally going to anyway. You're going to try to keep track of the story, and then I'm going to ask you questions to see how you comprehended it before telling you it in English. Are we all on board? Okay. Thank you. We didn't need an interpreter for that. You guys were on board. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions. Was my story happy, sad, or embarrassing, you think? Embarrassing. What was this sign, you think? Close, close. That's actually was my name. The last thing I signed was an important warning. What do you think it was? In English, which is, it's a lot faster to read it than sign it, if you can imagine. Hello, good morning, and welcome to Sunday Assembly. My name is Alexis Record. My personal moment is about working in a middle school in the deaf ed classroom. Not a school for the deaf, but a mainstream public school. This was 10 years ago in Longview, Texas. Deaf culture and hearing culture are different. All cultures have different behavioral rules. Deaf culture is beautiful, expressive, honest, loud. Hearing culture has weird, odd things, like people swearing they hear Yanny. You liars don't hear Yanny, you hear Laurel. There's one special thing about deaf culture, and it's called sign names. That's when a deaf person assigns you a special sign that you can use as your name. What is a sign name? Well, you can fingerspell a name, but after a while, that can be tedious, especially if your name's really, really long. A special sign can be creative. For example, a man named Charles can have a big, fluffy beard and be named Big Beard. Or there can be a generic everyday name, like imagine a guy named Gary. You can use the first letter of his first name, G, and put it in one of these places on your body, chest, head, or maybe if he works at a hospital, on the arm where the sign for hospital is. My friend Holly named my daughter. Her name is Lelia, and spelling it became tedious over time, so it got shortened from Lelia to Lelia, which looks similar to I love you in sign language, which is super cute. My sign name was not super cute. Remember, I can't name myself, and who did I socialize with? Deaf children, middle school children. So one day, I decided to wear bright red lipstick, just once, never again, just once, and it didn't matter. They saw me, laughed, and that was my permanent sign name for years. I tried to make them name me something like Angel or Princess or something better. Right now I could be called Shaved Head, which is also an A shape, but no, Clown Mouth. So my name was Clown Mouth, and it was fine. I accepted it, except for when I got a job at a deaf publishing company, where I worked for 6 years. And on my first day in as a professional customer service rep, I introduced myself as, "Hi, my name is Clown Mouth. How may I help you?" It was only 1 week on the job before my deaf coworkers renamed me to a normal sign name, Alexis at the Chin. So, what's the moral of the story? If you want a beautiful, or even a decently normal sign name, you must avoid children.
Thank you, that was great. It was hilarious, both ways. Our theme for today is sign, and we've talked about sign language, and Alexis is signing, and we could talk about some of the other hand gestures that we use all the time that we're all familiar with when we say something's good or okay, or we don't want people to talk about something, or if we're in traffic, we might proffer a sign. So many things that we do. But what I'd like to do with the theme is talk about signs. I think our clicker's not working, so I'm going to use. I brought my clicker with me, so I'm going to use that one. Hold on 1 second there. If that's okay. I think I got that. We'll give this a shot. So I have this ongoing monologue that kind of goes on in my head. I don't know how this is for other people, but it's almost it's like I'm probably thinking, and it's not words, but it feels like it's words that are going on in my head. It's like, so I see something, oh, that's really hilarious, and it sounds like that in my head. So then a lot of the things that I find funny, they bubble out, and that's bad puns, dad jokes, those just come right out. But there are some things that I don't say out loud. For instance, when I see this sign, and I'm driving in the car, and I'm the driver, and there's a passenger there. I always want to reach out and touch their forehead. just like that, but don't do that. And when I see this sign, I always think I'm going to see this. We toured a banjo factory recently. It's the Deering Banjo Factory. It's in Spring Valley. It's a preeminent banjo factory in the United States. And all the factory floor, it's all fellas that work there. It's all men that work there. And I think at one time there was women working there because there was a men's room and a women's room. But now that it's all men, the men modified the sign on the bathroom so that it would be okay to go in there. So I took that picture because you wouldn't want to go in if it was the other thing on there. And we were, my wife and I, we were traveling in Pennsylvania. We went to a glass factory, and this was the signs on the door. Oh, I'm sorry. That's the signs on the door. This door must remain locked at all times and keep this door closed. I mean, they're adamant about it, but yet there it is. I have this, so I guess we'll go back one for this. I have this compulsion that when I see a do not touch sign, I have to touch it. Now this is not, like if I'm in, if I'm at the Van Gogh Museum, I'm not going to go monkey with anything because they really mean don't touch it because you'll ruin the painting. But most of the time when people put do not touch on there, what they really means is don't monkey with this thing, but there's no problem touching it. And when I see something like that, it's a compulsion and I have to, so I send my wife a picture whenever I see one of those. This is an inventory at work and it's counted do not touch, so of course I have to. And the sign, the next sign I'm going to show you, I'm sorry, my son and I, we look at the hair salons. We saw the Hairport, the Hair Loft, Hair in Time, Hair We Go Again, ... I don't know what that means, the Harem, but we decided this was the best one by far, Curl Up and Die. I think that's an excellent usage of the sign. The next sign that I'm going to show you is a sign of the times. And the sign that it's the times of is World War II. So this was taken last month, just 76 years ago to the month where this place was extant and started receiving people. This is in the middle of World War II. This is, it's a concentration camp in the United States. There was 130,000 people of Japanese ancestry that lived here in the United States, and in 10 encampments, they rounded them up and brought them to places like this. This is Manzanar. Manzanar is in between Lone Pine and Independence on the east side of the Sierra Nevadas, very near Mount Whitney. It's in the desert, and these people had 2 or 3 days to board up their businesses or have somebody else take care of them, and they had to take the belongings, that only what they could carry with them. They couldn't take their pets. They had to leave their pets behind. The kids had to leave their toys behind, and they went to this uncertain future here in the desert, and that's where they lived. This is how they lived. This is an actual barrack that they have in there. You see, there's no privacy, and this is where they went to the bathroom. It's where they showered. No privacy. These people were just put into this situation, and it was an uncertain future. They didn't know what would happen to them. They're asked to pull up stakes and leave. Next picture, please. This is them waiting in line to go to the cafeteria. The people that were there at Manzanar. There was 11,007 people that from 1942 to 1945 that were interred there or kept there. And some of them died and were buried there at Manzanar. These are Americans. 80% of these people were American citizens. We know this is wrong. We know it's wrong. We know now, in hindsight. This is the next slide, if you don't mind. But what can we do? And how do we recognize the signs when something like this is happening? What can an individual do? Maybe an individual at this time couldn't do anything. I mean, maybe this was the sentiment of the time. This is what most people wanted. On a large scale, if we want to do something, we can find something we're passionate about, and we can find a group that's organized around that thing. We can help them out. We can organize. We can join them. We can march. We can protest. But if you don't have the energy to do that, or you're not inclined to do that, there are smaller things that we can do. We can, for instance, if you see somebody on a bus that's being harassed and somebody's yelling at them, you could go sit next to them if you think that they would like that, and you can talk to them. You can ask them what movie they saw, and you can have a conversation, and you can intervene without being confrontational. You can help somebody out that way. You can listen to people, and you can believe them. But if you even don't have things to do, there are smaller things that you can do, which is check in with people, pay attention, and remember, and tell the stories, because I really think in 200 years, will people know that the Holocaust was real if we don't tell each generation that it was real? Will they know that that happened? Will we be destined to repeat something like that again? I mean, this happened in the United States, and I would hate to think that this would happen again. If Me Too has shown, the Me Too movement has shown us anything, it's that these things are happening all around us. Sometimes they're ingrained in our culture. I mean, it's hard to see them sometimes. And sometimes when we do see them, it changes the way we view things. One of my proudest moments of my 12-year-old life was that I, through mowing lawns and taking out trash cans and picking up aluminum cans, was that I was able to afford 2 tickets to go see this guy. I grew up with this. I have a lot of energy put into these things. Sometimes the thing that we can do, it's small, and maybe the thing that we do is just what we do for ourselves. I'll clean that up. Whatever we do, whether we do it for ourselves or for our friends, it's important that we check in with each other and that we listen. And if you are going to protest, remember that I've showed this slide before, but the youth of today can be counted on to do things a little bit better than they have done in the past. And this is my favorite protest slide of all time. Thank you very much. And now we'll take a minute of silence. I do this practically every time. Can somebody tell me is announcements next? So we have, okay, great, excellent. Forgot my program. You can't tell the players without a program, people. So we have some announcements. So we'll try to keep this nice and succinct. And if you'll come up if you're making an announcement, come on up here and mind the shrapnel. The date on this, I don't have it in front of me, is the 24th. It's right on there, September 16th. We are going to have a beach assembly. So we don't have this venue on the 16th. So we thought, what better way to end the summer than to have the assembly on the beach? So Sunday Assembly San Diego has a beach. It's our beach. And we have been doing the cleanup there consistently. It's got a gazebo. It's a little bit far from the parking lot, so we will arrange for people to be able to get from the parking lot into the beach and then over to the bathroom, which is across the bay there. But it's going to be a grand time, so please mark that on your calendar and join us there.
We are going to be participating in the San Diego Pride Parade and Festival, and we are putting out a more hopeful than usual even call for volunteers, because this will be the first time that we will be not only marching in the parade but also participating in the festival, and so we'll need some help manning booths for the festival, and it's an assembly weekend. So yeah, go team. So if you can help us out with that, either marching or manning the booth, that would be great. And if you're interested in being part of the planning meetings, too, the next 2 meetings will be on May 23rd and June 6th at 6:45 at the Serra Mesa Library.
And every June, we try to have a Father's Day and summer solstice jam session and bonfire. So it's going to be, the location of it is going to be the same location as the beach assembly, so that everybody can get familiar with the location if you haven't been there yet. So Saturday the 16th, and we'll be there from 5 to 9. If you have any instruments, please bring them, with the exception of drums. The city has a restriction on that. So please, no drums. Everything else is welcome. We'll have the gazebo, and then we'll also have a place to have our bonfire. So from 5 to 9, please come. It's a family-friendly event, and just bring as many people as you would like. Thank you. And on our next assembly here in June, after assembly, we will have a clothing and accessory-free exchange. So if you want to, if you're done with your spring cleaning, just bring all the items here, and then people will pick them up. And you could also pick some stuff up for yourselves. Thank you.
And lastly, remember Sunday Assembly is run entirely by volunteers, so we do appreciate your recurring donations in any amount. And I turn you over once again to Mr. Paul Svensson.
Let's get up. Well, you get up every morning from your alarm clock, take the 8:15 to the city. There's a whistle up above, people pushing, people shoving, everybody is trying to look pretty. And if your train's on time, you can get to work by 9. It's a slaving job to get your pay. And if you ever get annoyed, look at me, I'm self-employed. I love to work at nothing all day. Here we go. And we'll be taking care of business every day, taking care of business every way, gonna take care of business. It's all mine, taking care of business and working overtime, work out. Easy as fishing, you could be a musician. Sounds loud and mellow. Get a second-hand guitar, chances are you'll go far if you get in with the right bunch of fellows. People see you having fun, just lying in the sun. Tell them that you like it this way. It's the work that we're avoid, and we're all self-employed. We love to work at nothing all day. Here we go, and we'll be taking care of business every day. Every way we've been taking care of business. It's all mine, taking care of business, working overtime, work out. You get up every morning from your alarm clock, take the 8:15 to the city. There's a whistle up above, people pushing, people shoving, everybody is trying to look pretty. And we'll be taking care of business, taking care of business. I've been taking care of business, taking care of business and working overtime, and we're taking care of business, taking care of business. We're taking care of business, taking care of business. Couple more. Taking care of business, taking care of business, taking care of business. We'll be taking care of business.
Thank you, Paul. You are truly outstanding. You really make this thing work. I really appreciate it. And thank you to Dr. Emmorey, who will be back here on the left side, if you want to have some questions and go a little bit longer, I'd like to thank Willie, who's our host here, and our child care professionals. That's our assembly for today. We have snacks over here, and then after we all have some nice conversation, some of us are going to go over to Pie Craft. You're all welcome to join us. The address is on the pamphlet. I hope I see you guys next time. Thank you very much.